There we go. Perfect. So I'll just add the date then, Wednesday, May the 3rd. Thanks, Karen, for letting me know I wasn't recording. So talking about the perpetual law of transmutation of energy today, which is a subsidiary law in the universal laws. And sometimes people will confuse the perpetual law of transmutation of energy with the universal law of vibration. And it's there, I guess, it could be interchangeable, right? And so basically what that means is things, everything is moving, energy moves. It's neither created nor destroyed, it just is. So from a universal law perspective, we have something called the formless substance. And in order for an object or our thoughts to move from formless to form, we must send it a picture. We think actually in images. So for those of you who have maybe throughout your adulthood or from childhood to adulthood have lost or have resistance to or have difficulty in visualizing and imagination, this could be one of the reasons why it might be difficult for you to feel like you're creating and manifesting. You are always creating and manifesting, right? So you'll either manifest what would be what you don't know what you're manifesting, right? Like, so an unconscious manifesting, or you're manifesting, consciously. You're bringing in awareness and intellect and thoughts. But how the actual law works is we have a thought, we have an emotion, and then there'll be some sort of image that's tied to that. And then once we have that, it's perpetuated with the emotion. So all pieces are important. And so this is why I think there's difficulty in there's difficulty in manifesting what we desire, because it's easier, at least my experience was, it was easier to feel fear than it was to feel a higher vibration energy. It was easier for me to feel doubt, to feel worry, to feel lack, to feel the belief of I'm not enough, than it was to feel I am enough, as an example. So if we understand the breakdown of how this works, it can help facilitate the embodiment of this law. So the first thing I wanted to share with you was that spirit and energy are constantly flowing to and through our mind, right? So we have a divine connection always. Now, we might not have it as a clear channel. It might be, kind of fuzzy. It might sometimes, when I first started doing this work again, it felt almost non-existent, that I wasn't connected to divine source energy. It has no rules, right? Meaning the thought will come to us and comes through us, and it doesn't necessarily pick if it's a good thought or a bad thought. It's right. It's just the thought is there. There is the isness of the thought. So if we feel like we have a bad thought or a lower density thought, that's us. That's our intellect, our personality, right? So this thought, this energy comes to and through us, and if we understand the other part of this law, whatever passes through us naturally grows. It naturally grows. So if you have worry, doubt, fear, angst, and any of those lower vibrational energies, and that passes through you, that's what's going to expand. If you have love, compassion, right, magic, like whatever that emotion, that will expand. So we can have the power to choose what the thought is and change our emotional state. And it can be sometimes feels harder to change the emotional state, but there are some things that we can do even physically, right? So if we're in a lower density state, we can do things like dance. you can walk, you can simply jump up and down. If you've ever been to like a Tony Robbins thing, right, and he gets you to jump up and down, that's what he's doing. He's having you physiologically change your state. You can stomp around, right? You can actually like grunt and groan. That will, if you like roar like grr, that actually will also change your state, right? You can have a pleasure practice, right? So go have an orgasm. Like that will change your state. You can exercise, you can do breath work, you can, I mean, like you could meditate, you could listen to music. If I haven't said, there's like a whole bunch of tools as a human being that we have to change your state. So you don't need to rely on just like your intellect, like I'm choosing happiness. I can't remember the first time I did that. I'm choosing happiness, and my inside voice was like, "Fuck that! No, you're not. Like, you're so not happy, right?" Like, so it's like, okay, what do I need to do to to feel happy? And what I noticed, it was, after Darcy and I broke up, that music made me sad. And I used to listen to country and Western music all the time, but when we were separated, it's like, this is really depressing music. Like, really, the dog always is dying, and someone's always like the cowboy's alone, or right. And so I stopped listening to country and Western music. I started to listen to more tantric, more meditative, more gong type of music to open up my lower chakra systems because it was closed, but to change my state. I can't remember who sings it, but it's the one who's like, "You're happy." Like, oh, Phoebe, so starts with a P. My music lovers will, as soon as you heard it, so it's about the being happy, right? And I listened to that over and over and over again, right? Songs that had me reminded me of happier times. I'd love to dance, so I would pick like 80s music and think about all the fun I had with my girlfriends dancing. So things like that. So we have the power to choose our state, but it might not just be saying I'm choosing happiness. Like, you might actually physically have to change what you're doing, because you're adding the physiological perspective to it, right? So we have this emotional state. The next piece of it is to add a thought to it, like add an image to it, right? So we're happy, and what's the image? Now, I'll use the example of, I was thinking about with my girlfriends. So I'm in my past. I need to bring that happiness, that visualization into my present, as if. Right? So then the next piece of it is what would create happiness? An image of what would create happiness for me, as if it was happening right now. Now, sometimes what we do is we go back into our past and we bring an image from our past into our present, and we work with that image. But the challenge with that can be, right, is that you might have, and not even be aware of it, a neural connection, like that past thing then led to what, right? So an example would be, I had so much fun when I was in my 20s with my girlfriends, and I my kids used to say to me, "Everyone else's parents party, but you don't." And I'm like, I drank enough in my 20s. I'm good, right? So if I think about the dancing, it comes with like all the partying, which is fantastic, and then that comes with the first husband, which is also great, but that comes with a divorce. Not kind of cool. So when I'm changing my state and I'm listening to the 80s music, I need to like change my state and change my image that I have from my 20-year-old to, at that time I think it was 46-year-old, to my 46-year-old. Wouldn't it be cool if I could go out with my girlfriends this weekend and dance with my girlfriends now, or even just what I want to create in the moment of time? So just be in awareness. If you're bringing back some of your past, you might need to change it into a present day moment so that there's no connection to your past, right? So energy comes in, we create our state, we create the form, we think in pictures. And so if you have a difficulty thinking in pictures of what you desire, and this is something that happened with me at this time, I realized that my imagination was very limited. And so I started with something really tiny, like, could I imagine a coffee brewing? Could I imagine baked bread, right? Like, what would that smell like? What would that, look like? I started to, could I imagine like a snowman? Could I imagine a Christmas tree? So I started with things that I knew I could imagine, and then I built it up, right? Could I picture a lake? Could I picture the mountains? And I just started to flex my imagination muscle again. So when we think in pictures, we'll turn that image over and over and over again in our mind, and that's what will help manifest. If you do not have a picture in your mind at a conscious level, you have an unconscious picture in your mind, and that's what you will manifest. So you can make the decision of what that picture looks like. Right now, for some of you, you'll want to get really specific, and others you won't want to or don't need to. But you work with with what you have. When you have an image from your past come up, you stop that image, and you just like, no, delete, and that's what I delete, delete. This is what I want, and then I would replace my past thoughts, emotions, feelings, and images with a new one. So it's as simple as this. We'll just do a quick exercise. So if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, just close your eyes and think about a blue sky and whatever blue you want. And there's this amazing bright spring sun happening. It's like the most beautiful day. It's a little bit of a breeze. The sun is on your face. Just feel the warmth of the sun. It's perfect. Whatever warmth that's perfect for you. And now bring in a cloud. And it starts as just this really kind of fluffy white cloud. But quickly is transitions into a darker cloud. And the temperature drops about 6 degrees very, very quickly. You know you're safe, but you can feel the difference in the temperature, correct? Okay, great. Now it's a miracle, and the dark cloud, right, dissipates just as quickly as it came in, and the temperature increases by those same 5 degrees. And now you're back to the sun on your face. And just stay there for like 3 or 4 more seconds, and then open your eyes. That's how quickly you can imagine. Right? So when you have a thought or an image that you don't want, just bring in what you want. And it can be like something like that, bring in the sun, and then transition it to something that something else that you want, right? It doesn't have to be complicated at all. And I think sometimes what happens is we complicate it, right? We think it needs to be more complex, and it doesn't. It really and truly doesn't. So when something pops up you don't want, change the image. And know that that's how powerful you are, right? That you can simply make a different decision. So the negative thoughts that we sometimes have will give us the negative feeling, an ominous feeling, let's say, right? So what happens to us is it causes an endorphin release in our body. So just like you had an endorphin release with the sun, a negative thought gives you an endorphin release. And so what happens, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, is we become chemically addicted to that negative thought. So we become chemically addicted to the thoughts of procrastination, to the thoughts of self-sabotage, to thoughts of judgment, right? To those lower density thoughts. So part of the reason why it can feel like, why do I always procrastinate, or why am I always self-sabotaging? It's because there's a chemical addiction there for you, right? And so the opportunity then is to find another way. Now, what often happens with procrastination and self-sabotage is you're going to find a shiny object to help you change your state, right? And it might not necessarily be something that's going to move you towards the life that you desire. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just being awareness of, oh, I found this shiny object and now I feel good. And so that's what happens with your body. So my question that I'm being asked to guide you is, what is your shiny object? What distracts you, from building the life that you want, right? And here's what I mean. And it can be really insidious. So I'll share an example with you. I love learning, and I love actually like studying, and I so intrigued and have so many interests, around that line. So when I'm feeling less than, when I'm feeling scattered, when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling like I'm spinning, when I'm feeling like I'm dropping balls, my go-to place can still be, right? So I'm going to go study. I'm just going to take a few minutes and I'm going to go studying. Studying is my squirrel, right? And it's disguised as I'm moving things towards my career. So there's truth to it, right? Like I'm studying for my bachelor's degree right now. And there's a place and time for that. But if I'm procrastinating, right, and I have this image of what I'm trying to create in my life, which is my vehicle is the business to this life that I want, and I have projects on the go, which I do, and then I find myself, oh, I need to write a privacy policy for my website, and I'm going to do that, but I'm going to go study first. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I'm using studying as my distraction. And so it's important, but I use it as my distraction. So my question for you is, what is your squirrel, your shiny object? What do you use to distract you from creating the life that you want and using your business to create that life? So another way of saying this is, what shiny objects do you have in your life that you go to when you're procrastinating on maybe doing marketing or sales, right? Because that's the shiny object. So that could be scrolling, right? That could be doing looking at, oh, I'm going to learn how to do Instagram reels. So for me, it's always learning. Like whenever I go to learn and or scrolling, right? Like, okay, I've got to do this thing, but I'm just going to check my phone now, So for a long time, and even sometimes now, I have to take my phone and when I'm doing projects and put it in a different room. And actually, so my office is upstairs in my house. I put my phone downstairs, right? Versus even in my bedroom, because it's still really close. Right? And so what's distracting you? So let's go back to this we have the formless substance, we turn into form, we need to change our state, we need to bring it to present moment, we need to have an image to go along with this, and we need to be in awareness at the same time what our shiny object syndrome is. What are you creating the distraction? Now, it also can be things like manifesting chaos. So it might not be like studying, but it could be the manifesting of chaos, right? And it could be just things like the wash machine breaks down, or the dishwasher is not working properly, or my car, something will happen with my car, right? Diane says eating, right? Absolutely. Where can I go? What can I eat? I'll crave foods that I don't normally crave. Like I was never a fan of potato chips. Then I started craving potato chips. I'm like, well, that's really interesting, right? I mean, yeah, physiologically, I can talk about the salt, so I can go eat, I can go have salt, right, in a healthier way. But what does that look like for you, right? Um, how are you, how are you managing that, right? So whenever we feel pressure, anxiousness, or guilt, you'll have a tendency to run away from that. So that's when these things will come up, right? And do something that makes you feel good. But it mostly won't be what's going to move you towards your business, or towards, if we set the 90-day goals a little while ago, right? It usually doesn't move you towards the goal. It can look like it moves you towards the goal. I'll use things, the studying piece, right? That you would think, well, yeah, that's totally moving. And that's partially true, right? That's partially true. Getting my bachelor's degree is important because it's part of my like really big, hairy, audacious goal. And studying distracts me. Studying makes me feel good. Studying is security for me, right? And so it can be a good habit, right? So if you find yourself, well, I'm just going to go meditate again. Nothing wrong with meditation, but are you using meditation or walking or exercise or, to distract you? So this is a fine line. Are you using it to distract, or are you using it, to perpetuate you forward? You might be stuck in a task or stuck in a creative moment. Meditation more than likely would work, right? Or exercise or breath work would work. This is the insidiousness of our beliefs, and how when we decide we want to do something and it's a little uncomfortable, how our brain tries to create safety and security, right? And so you might need to change up your routine, and that can be difficult, right? Because your routine might be part of the challenge that you're having. It might be part of, it's not a problem, but I'll use that word. And so, although I don't believe in problems, right? So one of the ways that you can, I think, be clear about this is to develop a habit of reflecting on your day. So at the end of the day, you reflect, right? What tasks, commitments did I make? And what did I not follow through on? What distracted me from following through? And I've said this before, you can ask yourself, what excuse did I use? What excuse did I use? And that's a harsh word, but sometimes we need a little bit of a wake-up call, right? So what excuse did I use? So when you can look at and assess when you didn't get things done, then what's really important is to not have any guilt or shame around it. It's just a fact. Like the sky today is blue, right? And I say it's a fact, it's a perception. I perceive the sky to be blue. So I guess I need to say that. But it treats like, oh, that's interesting. I dropped a ball, right? Oh, that's interesting. I made a commitment to have this done, and I didn't get it done, right? And no guilt or shame, but look at, okay, what's, what excuse did I use? What reasons did I give myself? Where did I become distracted? And sometimes you'll realize that you just honestly had too many commitments that day. You had too many tasks. And then you start to see your schedule in a little bit differently. So you also will be able to see if you messed up, if you dropped the ball. Now, one of two things can happen. You might go into excuse mode, like, well, here's all the reasons, right? And that might be because you have this need to be right, or you might feel bad because you have a need to not be wrong. And this is just really it's just data for you. Oh, I'm feeling bad because I have a need not to be wrong. And the importance of that is when you're setting your goals, you're setting your intentions and your commitments, you'll have an awareness of, again, what the stopping points, right? So it's like, oh, look at my need to not be wrong is preventing me from fulfilling my commitment to myself. And that's the important piece. It's preventing me from fulfilling the commitment to myself. Now, what happens when you have these lower density energies? So here we go back to the image that you'll have in your mind, even if it's not a conscious image, will be one of a lower density energy. And so you'll need to change your state of, yep, totally drop that ball. Okay, what's next? And then you might need to do something physiologically to feel better. That might be dancing, that might be singing, humming, right? Humming works as well. You can just hum, right? You can command, right? I command the universe, you can, there's just so many different tools that you have in your tool chest to do that, to change your state. So, and then we just, when you realize that you did make the commitment, you just like, okay, next. Like you just really, it's so important. Just like, okay, let it go and make an observation of when it's coming up, and then make the commitment. And here's the challenge: make the commitment to behave differently tomorrow. Right. Now, if you have a neurodivergent brain, that can be difficult if you're trying to, I guess, not, I don't like the word normal, right? A normal brain. A neurodivergent brain thinks differently, right? So we get overwhelmed in all of the details. So as a neurodivergent, what you'll want to do is go into the macro, the big picture, and pick one thing, right? So versus like the whole entire thing. And you don't need to be a neurodivergent to utilize that, right? But go into the macro and pick one thing. It's like my office is overtly cluttered right now. Like I've got stuff all over. And I noticed this weekend that I was avoiding cleaning my office. And it's because if I was to actually clean it, it honestly would be like probably a 3-hour job. And I don't have, so that's the excuse. I don't have 3 hours at once to do that. Total excuse. But I do have 20 minutes. I can take 20 minutes and clean a corner, right? I can take 5 minutes and dust. I can sometimes you need to bring those look at it from the macro and do like one thing and then do another thing and then do another thing. And it might not be in an orderly fashion. It might not be all done at once. You might not have the satisfaction of doing the check mark, right? Completed, because that can be important for people as well. So working with where you're at, but knowing full well that everything that you do has an outcome. Everything you don't do has an effect on the outcome. But know for sure. So go back to kind of tie it into what I wanted to share that today is, and we're not even finished like the whole universal law, but the perpetual transmutation of energy, right, is everything starts as a non-form and moves into form, and we move it. We move the energy of non-form into form by our thoughts, our emotions, and our ability to imagine or visualize. And when we get distracted by whatever it is that we get distracted by, we then are showing ourselves, showing our personalities that although we say we're going to do something or we say that we want something, we don't follow through. And at an unconscious level, every time you do that, you at an unconscious level, you disappoint, quote unquote, yourself. And you show more and more evidence that you're not committed, that you can't be trusted, and that you say things and you don't necessarily follow through. So you say things and you don't have the ability. There's no trust, basically, right? So it's insidious. It's like really, really insidious, and because of that. So the key to like reversing that is to, when you're making your commitments versus to-dos or tasks, make a commitment and make how many commitments that you can do, right? So if you can only commit to one thing that day because your schedule is whatever, right? Then commit to that one thing or go into, I'll use like Tuesdays as an example. Tuesdays is a more of a heavier client day. So I don't commit to any other tasks other than that. So if I get extra things done, at the end of the day, I go look at all the extra things I got done, right? And if I dropped balls, because I drop balls on a regular basis, then I go into, okay, how can I show up differently? What do I need to experiment with my executive functioning brain? And we all have those opportunities to do that, right? Versus like, oh my God, I forgot this, I did this. So releasing the pressure from yourself, and finding different ways and means for you to, I guess, forgive yourself is what I'm hearing, right? Some of you need to forgive yourself. And because we're not perfect, right? That's part of the journey. All right. Anyone have a comment or question?